Nope, okay. Go ahead, questions from
Can I have a
everybody else?
clarification? On the 22nd, we received a packet with the budget as we're going to vote on it at the annual meeting. On the 30th, we have a budget meeting. Is that just for information and nothing can be changed after that time?
Go ahead, yeah, so you can.
Right, so the budget packet will go out to all the owners on Monday the 22nd.
Right.
On the 30th is just a PowerPoint presentation to go through the budget packet, but no, once it's voted today, nothing will change in that packet.
So if owners have a question or a problem with anything on the budget, the only way they can do something about it is to not vote for the whole budget.
Correct.
Okay, just wanted to clarify that.
And that's been the case in the 8 years I've been here. Once it's approved by the board and goes out, it cannot be changed.
Except we usually had the discussion earlier.
The discussion's always been after you receive the packet. The discussion last year, or the year before COVID, was on the 29th as well.
Okay.
Is the meeting open on the 30th to the owners?
Yes,
And what time is it again?
6:30.
I have to ask them questions.
Yes.
On the discussion about.
Excuse me.
Oh, sorry.
I need a microphone.
You need what?
I need them to use the microphone for the minutes.
Okay, all right. I think that's good. Sorry, we're going to give you a microphone because Linda is having difficulty picking up the questions for the minutes.
Okay, so on the discussion regarding, you said the referendum on the Morrison's agreement, will that question have what the risk and benefits are for keeping them versus not keeping them? Because I've seen a copy of the contract. I've been a contract manager for 30 years. I've worked in multi-billion-dollar corporations. There are some issues with terminating it early versus keeping them online. So I would like to, I would be interested in knowing what the risk or their termination costs versus keeping them and managing the contract a little closer.
Okay, so I'll just make a general statement about that. There's not going to be a position about it. What I will tell you about the contract, which I think is important for you to know, since you read it, there was a clause in the which I think is the most important clause that we put in that contract. We know how hard it is for people to staff and to supply. We've talked about that, right? They have done as a good job of certainly making sure that we are insured service. They have had challenges. I get comments all the time, which are positive and negative. I mean, I get them both. And I think, Rita, you get it. We talk to them and try to drive them to outperform the situation is what we can do. There are, in the contract though, there is a clause and it's called force majeure. And since you know contracts, you know what force majeure means.
I do.
Okay. It means that circumstances beyond your control, you can't hold somebody accountable for. But in this case, we knew COVID was there. And so one of the very specific things that I wanted in that contract was that COVID would not be an excuse. And so it has been excluded as a reason for force majeure. So we can hold them accountable to the contract, exactly how it's written and exactly how it is. The question is, do we have patience to sort of ride the thing out while we're getting fed at an expensive rate? Or do we just want to say, you know what, we're going to look elsewhere? And I'm going to let the folks, we're going to let the folks here make a statement on that. One in, one out.
I just have a follow-up, and we can talk about this later too, but I don't know that some of those clauses would actually come into play, whether or not you call staffing a COVID issue or not, based on the current climate with the Delta variant dropping rapidly. I work with hospitals and other healthcare facilities doing contracts a lot, so I know that the facts that the Delta variant is reducing, so I don't even know pull that into play. But there are other clauses in the contract that would not be based on a COVID situation where there's been capital money invested, et cetera, whether or not that would still be, whether MBT would still be responsible for reimbursing them for the capital improvements that they made. So there are things like that that I would like to know what would happen if we terminated early versus if we didn't.
I think that we can go on that offline, right? Because things like that are more complicated pieces of the contract. But just so that you know, we haven't taken any capital money. So we have no obligation for those things at this point. We've been focused on just getting dining up, running, and right. And we haven't taken into account the things that are benefits that we could get from that contract. And so we don't have obligation at this point. Yep, Dan.
Rita, I'm glad you're going to get the input of the owners on the landscaping, but don't forget we also need to get the approval of Sandy Springs. Ever since the Yanks burned down Atlanta, the government has a lot of regulations, including size of trees that can be taken down, canopy that can be removed and all that, so it's important that they're involved too. We all are glad that people are moving into PCC, but Brian, even your own study showed that there's a limit as to how far we can consolidate 2 beds into 1 before we start losing money. So is that being taken into account, Rita, and the conversion, or whoever should answer that question? The conversion of 2 beds into 1, a bed that we used to get $3,700 a month. We're now taking 2 of those and converting it into $4,500 a month.
Well, we're looking at the market to tell us that. And I think Diana Daniels has given us a great piece of information to help us further in terms of the marketplace and the pricing. And we're going to look to that to get some more information. We think we're in the right spot. The numbers look like we're in this right spot, and the preliminary information from the couple of contacts that you provided us with says the same thing. So we feel pretty good, but we're going to continue to investigate it. And the only action that we're going to take in the PCC is to fix what we have supply to take. So the good news is that we're up about $32,000 in income for this year that we didn't otherwise have. And if you look at that on a run rate basis, that's looking like a good $140,000 for 2022. So really happy with what we're doing, Dan. We have more work to do in terms of the marketplace, and whether or not we even need to sell, which is a point that you made very strongly to me last week, which was an important point. We don't have 10 rooms ready, right? We don't have it ready to do, to even promote because of the disrepair. So we're going to go on demand. We're going to spend the amount of money we need to in order to get people occupying those facilities. So.
We also need less staff. If we're occupying a suite of 1 person, which would normally be 2 people, then that would also increase our staff.
Yeah, Dan's seen the numbers. He knows where the break even is. We went over it. I think what he would like to see is us to push the price up further if we could. And I don't love to do that too. What I've seen doesn't suggest that we might be able to do that.
Now, Brian, sure, we can charge the most possible, obviously, but what I'm talking about is in the work that you did, it showed that if we drop below 16 or 17 residents, we begin to lose money, the way it was before. So
No, hang on a second, Dan, right? Because you're presuming, when you say something like that we're already below, okay? We're not up to 24 units, we're not up to 26 units, so it's almost disingenuous, in a way, for you to say that, well, what if you're at 14, you lose money? We're already there. And it doesn't, and there's nothing that suggests that we're gonna be at 24. There's nothing, there's no data that we have that says we're gonna be there.
Sure there is. There's past history. COVID is a once-in-a-century thing. If we were able to be at, Rita has told me, 19 to 23 people out of 26 beds in the past, why all of a sudden are we assuming that we could be at 19 to 23 people again?
It's pretty simple, we're not there, right? So we're moving in that direction.
We're not
We are
at
moving in that direction. We are renting out these units. We got a run rate, well, of probably $18,000, $180,000, $206,000 more right now because of the work that's been done. Okay?
So-
And so we're gonna milk it. We're gonna milk it. We're gonna continue to do what the demand is for us.
So
And
you'll
we're gonna
convert
make sure-
26 beds into 13 if that's what it takes to milk it, using your words.
Yeah, what we want to do is make sure, when I say milking it, all right, just so that we're not unclear about what
It's not.
I mean by that.
Go ahead.
We have people, 5 people, all right now, that have become interested in what we're doing on that and are looking like they are prospects for it. We've got a price point where we've pushed the price point, we've had people back off. When we keep the price point, we have people accepting it. That tells me that that's the market for us. I'm looking at 2 reports from different independent placers, right? That suggest that there is a luxury view and there is a standard view, and the ranges for people are between $3,500 and probably about $4,500, $4,600, which is what we're on, those 2 things. And we haven't talked to them, and they need to come in here and they need to look. But from now until that date, when I can have people look in here, we are gonna try to fill that PCC with people who appreciate and can afford to be there. And that's what we're gonna do.
You keep talking, or I'm being ingenuous, or whatever you said, that I'm talking about price. I'm not talking just about price, I'm talking about number of people that we have in there. Because your own analysis, not mine, showed that 16 to 17 people was a break even if you went through some of the consolidation that you would like to do versus.
What I
leaving it.
showed you, Dan, was
I
that,
would like to be able to think.
well, but I want you to say what you saw, not what you didn't see. Okay, what you saw
I asked for
was,
information, why didn't I see it then?
what you saw was, you saw a net income that was as good as at 16 in the situation versus what was as good as 21 in the same situation. That's what you saw. So, you know, you're talking about some spot here that isn't right, because I could make the argument that says, I can easily make the argument that says that you dip below, in that model, you dip below 21, you're losing money compared to the alternative. That's what that study said.
Very quick.
Yeah.
Would you reconfigure the suites if the occupancy was full?
Good question.
No. I wouldn't, because the demand would say, I can fill that, I filled it.
At less profit?
Yeah, it was less profit, right? The operating income on that, on the old view of it, 26, the operating income, I never saw it go above 185,000. Never went above 185,000. Even making $1 million, we didn't have it over 185,000.
Your
What's that?
analysis said 250 that you gave me.
That's under the pricing that we have right now.
Yeah, and I'm not
Right,
talking
and-
about pricing.
I'm
I'm talking about changing the number of beds. All right, it's pretty obvious that you, the board, or whatever, is gonna do what you want with PCC, and I and other people object to that because
Yeah.
you're ignoring some other alternatives that you don't want to consider. Let me move on.
I haven't seen an alternative. I haven't seen an alternative. I hear words. I hear words.
The alternative
Okay.
is that in years past, we were able to sell out the 26 beds that were up there, 80% full, 19 to 23 is what you told me, Rita, right? It averaged 19 to 23?
Yep, when Kurt and Kathy Brinkle were here.
I don't know who those people are, but we were able to occupy 19 to 23 beds. We're on a path now to have 13 beds. And Brian's analysis shows that as you have more people, you need more staff, you need more meals and all that. I'm giving you credit for that. What I'm saying is, what I heard this morning is we were jumping up and down with the thought of we now have a fifth person, if I was keeping count, that wants to move in, where we've consolidated 2 beds into 1 bed, 1 room. When does that stop? Are you willing, and I think you just said you would convert all 26 beds into 13 as long as somebody wanted that 13th bed? That's what I heard. Am I wrong? And that cost us money to do that.
Well-
Because your own analysis, change your analysis to fuzzle with.
No, hey,
At
hey,
some point, you begin to
I'm
lose
gonna go
money
to
doing
a
that.
general, I'm gonna go to a general philosophy that I have, and I think at least most of the board members share the philosophy, all right? And that is that the PCC is an amenity that we have, okay? And you may not agree with this philosophy, okay? Because there are 2 ways to look at it. It's either a income generating operation that is separate from Mount Vernon Towers, okay? Mount Vernon Towers folks can go to it, right? Just like any other person in the marketplace. But my view, and if anybody disagrees with that at this board, we've talked about it. If the view is different than this, which is, it is a facility that we have here, and it is an amenity that we should sell to prospective buyers that says that, hey, you're here, we age a place, sometimes you gotta add some value to it, and we should be paying for it if we want to have it as an amenity, okay? The fact that it generates money is the side game, right? Which is, it is a great place to generate top line revenue, okay? Top line. It has not generated a significant amount of bottom line revenue. The margins have been thin, okay? At best, 18%, okay? Not very good, okay? You wouldn't run a business on 18% margin. So in the configuration and the analysis that we did, we drove the margin to $680, you saw it, $690,000 of top line revenue, okay? With $236,000 of bottom line net income. And so we work on a margin of about 30%. So we move to a margin of 30% instead of 18% and drive volume. It's a business decision, okay? But if the owners here want to have a amenity available to them, we can drive occupancy to the point that it is, and we can retain our margin. And if you think that that's a wrong thing to do, well, then we disagree.
You keep putting words in my mouth. I want it to be not 18 or 30 or 5,000%. I'm looking for the most money we can get out of it. And camouflaging it as 18 and 30% and other numbers like that can hide the number. I'm only talking about your own work, Brian, that you gave me. If you gave me the old numbers or something, I don't know.
I'm about to let my wife talk to you, and that's gonna be bad.
Well, I don't want to have a board, so that's not a member of the board. We talked last week, so I don't need to say anything more, but the one thing I will say that I'm very, very adamant on is when it was up at 26 or whatever it was, and people then were slowly leaving, you saw some of the rooms. They weren't just repair. They needed to be updated. They needed to be.
Not disputing that.
Just, there were a lot of people that live here, including my parents, Angie was one of those too, that a lot of people would say, yeah, we hear about the PCC, we don't know much about it, but I heard I don't want to go up there if I have to.
Not disputing that either.
But Dan, that means a lot to the people that live here, and that's what Brian is trying to say is you need to decide, do people want this, the owners, the people that live here, they want to be able to have this facility if they need it.
That's an amenity we should have.
That's
We
all I'm
signed
saying.
Okay.
Right, what I have on the board right now, over here shows 2019 pre-COVID. Total personal care income was.
Can't hear you. Can't hear you.
Microphone.
Talking.
Sorry, what I have on the board right now is the financial statement straight from Sage, logged in, 2019 pre-COVID. The PCC income for 2019 was $978,289. Net income of that was $185,442. Straight from Sage, straight on the tax return. Can't fake it.
And you know what, that's a place we don't want to go back to. You know what, I'd like to have I would love to have 24 units at a 30% margin. Now, that'd be a good thing to do.
Yeah, our
But
employee
the
cost
market
for that
doesn't
year
bear
was
it.
$546,000, so it was more than half of the income before expenses.
I think if you want to have a continuing conversation about it, we can have a continuing conversation about it, but we're not going to do it here.
I have a question about this, and I didn't have the chance to come to the PCC opening because I was out of town, but I guess my question is, as far as the board and the owners here, what really is the mission of the PCC? I think that's kind of a question that I have, is like, is it a generating, is it a revenue generating unit? Or is it an amenity that we cover the operating expenses? So I kind of hear two different things.
Well,
Go ahead,
sorry, Joe.
Yeah, so I'm hearing kind of two different things, and I'm confused about that, so, maybe I shouldn't be, but I am. The other thing is, as far as the number of beds, I did go up and see the PCC on a different occasion, and I wholeheartedly agree that things need to be improved, because I don't think it would pass muster in any inspection or anything that went on. So some of those things that you're doing, I really think are needed and very, very wanted. With regard to the number of beds, I think what the decision again comes down to, what's the purpose, what's our mission? Are we trying to generate revenue, or are we providing an amenity? And I think that question really needs to be resolved. I also know that there were some issues with recent legislation about the number of beds in a facility that you could have to meet certain regulations. I know that we're at the threshold at being over 25 or greater, so I think that those things also need to be considered as far as what we're operating and what our mission is, so. Sorry for being so wordy.
Thank you for those comments, those are all true, okay, and they're all important comments. But just to answer the question about, what are we trying to do, I think I just said that, which is, at first, it's an amenity, right? It's an amenity for the residents here. That's at first. I believe that's what we have come to conclude as important, okay? Now, people might not agree with that, okay? And that's okay. People don't agree with that, okay? But having that amenity, what we know from history is that it has generated a lot of income, okay? So what we want to try to do is do both if we can, right? But we don't have to go so far to income that we unbalance the goal, right? The objective, which is the amenity. So there is a marketplace. That marketplace pays a certain amount. We need to know what we need to do to be competitive. We've done a lot of research in that area. We're still continuing research in that area. We are trying to find out what people like. We've been asking about that. We've had a lot of people up to the PCC. We've asked the question, I won't put them here, I won't put them there, I'll put them in this. And so we're finding a bit of success right now, okay, where we did not have success in 2020 or the whole year so far of 2021. So we're finding some success. We would like to ride that success a bit here, and see how this thing turns around. So it's generating income for us when we were underwater just 2
Yeah,
months
so
ago.
I would just say, I'm not surprised that it was underwater in 2020 or 2021. Is anybody else? Because nobody wanted to go in any kind of facility where there's COVID. So those 2 years taken into consideration, I think are kind of outliers, which is what all hospitals and office-based labs and ambulatory surgery centers are doing. They're having to reevaluate and look at, they don't necessarily look at 2020 and 2021 as being a standard operating budget years, so they're comparing from this point, like 2022 to 2019, which is what I think you're doing. So I'm not surprised that there were problems filling the facility. That doesn't, but I don't know that just because there were problems in those years, that we overhaul everything based on those operating numbers, because I would expect that they would be pretty horrible. Just saying.
I mean, it's well,
Oh, come on.
I'm exhausted on the subject, frankly, because, and it's not because I don't want to hear it. What I do know is that we can't compare, right? We cannot compare. The world changed in the last 2 years, okay? And there's a market today. The market of 2017 is not the market of today. You're right, there are new regulations that are out there, there are restrictions, we gotta care in this way, that way, we can have so many per bed, so many workers per bed, we have to have 49 square feet of shower space if we're gonna have it, you know. And there are lots of things that make it different today than it was yesterday. And so I'm most interested in what our community says about it, who will come to it, and what the price has to be for them to find it affordable to say yes.
I would like to read the referendum question that we're asking of the owners in the meeting in December. The referendum question is, would you like the Mount Vernon Towers Board of Directors to look at what it takes to provide assisted living and continuing care to Mount Vernon Towers? In addition, independent living and personal care. Please fill in one of the answers. We're asking for the owners and the owner residents to respond as to whether they think PCC is important to them. And we're looking forward to getting that information at that date, and then we'll look at the other questions such as how much money do we make if we have 16 occupied or we have 26 occupied, and at that time a decision can be made. So we need a referendum first. And I'd like to table this discussion at this point in time.
I agree with that. I'm gonna move on. Yep. Other questions?
Yeah, I think that what we're doing right now is nice, but assisted living, that puts it in a whole new ballgame.
I think the point that, Carol, the point that we just made is we're gonna ask you that.
But that's not really a good question. If you throw assisted living in.
Hang on. It is a good question, because you are saying that that's a whole new ballgame, and that might be right. But you know what? There's 41 other people in this room who may not agree. I don't know. We're asking you guys to weigh in on that. But what I don't want to do is have that debate here. Why would we have that debate here?
Because you don't let us have it in another place. If you say assisted living in one group and you put what I think many people want is a place to recover, to do things like that. You talk assisted living, you're changing the whole group of what we have to do up there. We have to get nurses and doctors.
Yeah.
That's just a question in the budget packet. If you feel against it, just mark it, you're against it.
Right, but if you're saying it and putting it in with the other things that people are for.
Carol, the purpose of doing a referendum question is to say, look, you guys are all gonna get a package.
Okay,
That
I give up, that's fine, but I think you're mixing things up a lot.
I almost wonder if you just separate assisted living and PCC into two different buckets. Because it's really important right now.
There are two different things. We are qualified to a point, and we are only qualified to a point. when you go to assisted living, when you take and say, we want to now go to continuous care, like assisted living, you're now taking the next step. And it's a complicated step to take. It's expensive to take. It takes a lot of work to figure out what that would be. And we're only interested at this moment of determining whether or not the community is interested in that.
Yes,
Not whether we're interested in it.
I certainly agree with you. If this question is to be asked of our residents, and it should also be asked of the people who are quote-unquote renters, it has to be defined. You have to define the terms, and to throw out assisted living or personal care without really clear definition would be a great disservice to everyone, including you.
Right. Well said. Right.
Excuse me, anything I say is probably because I'm running for the board. So I'll give that disclaimer to start with, but it does seem that the discussion we're having is helpful, but you're gonna pose that to the owners in a formal way so that they'll have an opportunity to give all of that input. Speaking personally, it was a great appeal to me when we were looking at coming here, that the PCC could be contacted if, like it happened, Helen fell, and they came and helped her get up. Didn't have to call 911. They did welfare checks. They did several other things that I think are real good selling points for the PCC. For it to become a cash cow, I'll call it, I think would be misconstruing the purpose of a not-for-profit corporation, corporation. But I think we can have the best of both worlds. Certainly, it should not be a lost leader by any means, but it can provide the services that we had before COVID. Now, if I could change the subject,
I'm all for that.
I was really concerned about some remarks that were made by a member of the board at the last meeting, and several of the residents have and owners have reacted the same way. Actually, I recorded it on my phone so I wouldn't misstate, but it was stated that we're confusing Mount Vernon Towers with an adult care center. This is an independent living facility. We're offering independent living, and it seems like a lot of people are looking for a cradle to grave experience, but we just don't have that. People are supposed to be able to come out and go to all the facilities, to the campground outside, to the swimming pool, or to the dining room, and services to give people food in their room was primarily because of COVID and is an exception. I just want to know whether the board, formally or informally, has adopted some standard that the leasing or selling agents, whoever they may be, should adhere to make sure that they're mobile, agile, hopefully not hostile, and if so, I'm very concerned about that.
I'm going to respond, because I believe that what you're attempting to quote is something that Reed Horn said.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm gonna defend you for a moment, then I'm gonna let you take care of whatever you wanna say, all right? One of the things that Reed said, I'll start with, because I was there when it happened, okay? We were having a meeting, and he said, I want to be here from cradle to grave. That's what he said. And it was in the context, he didn't say, people think they're gonna be here from cradle to grave. And that's wrong, because that's how that's positioned. He said, I want to be here from cradle to grave, and a lot of people do too. Okay, I heard it. That's okay, you better play it, because I heard it. He also said this, and I'll just quote, because this has been bothering me as well. This is from the board minutes, okay? So it was recorded.
It's on the tape, too.
Yep. Mr. Reed Horn said, MVT is supposed to be, because this is the rest of what you said, supposed to be an independent living facility, and people are supposed to come out to the different facilities, including the dining room. Food delivery to the condos came about because of COVID. And that's what he said. That's what he said. That's from the board minutes. Okay?
That
So
part I
Reed,
quoted, yeah.
so Reed, do you think people should leave? What do you think? What do you want to say?
I've been misquoted on that several times. And I said, yes, I do believe that this is a cradle to grave facility, because that's the reason I came here. I have no intention of leaving here except feet up if the Lord wills. It has been construed and misrepresented on several occasions. My position is that it is a facility for 55 years, adults and older. It is independent. I also am pushing for the PCC to be retrofitted so that I might go there someday myself. And I assume, and I feel like it should be an amenity, not necessarily a cash cow. We did make money on it at one point in time. We will make money if we convert it to 14 or 16 studios. If it were left as it was a year ago, I wouldn't go there. And I don't think many other people would go there. As a matter of fact, some people told me they would not go there. But now that it's been refreshed, they're saying, you know, I might go there, or I would go there. As a matter of fact, I can point to several people that made that comment. My point is that what you say, Bill, is partially true, and I won't dispute it, only to say that I think anyone that comes here should be independent. Independent means you can take care of yourself.
Exactly.
And if they can't take care of themselves, they should go to PCC. And if they can't stay at PCC, they should go elsewhere. Now, there are those that are concerned that the board is going to take a position whereby we'll reject people that come here because of their, quote, age, or because of their mobility. That's not true. That is not our position, and it's not legal. We understand that. There are those that are fearful that they may lose a lease on their unit because we would reject somebody. We do not accept or reject people. We accept anyone that wants to come here who thinks they can be a part of the community. That's my position. And if you have any questions of me about that, please see me after the meeting. Thank you.
Okay, so it is my understanding then that the board does not have some written or unwritten standard for who can come here.
No,
Is that right?
In fact, you said that you thought that the board had a culture. Those were your words, right, last week, all right? And I'm gonna address something else that came up, because you're about to do it. You're about to do it, and I'm gonna do the same thing with you that I just did with Reed, which is, I know what I heard, and I know what I see, all right? And it comes from a comment that was made because we were looking at real estate, potential real estate brokers, okay? And actually, Dan was the one who stood up and said, I see this letter, and what you're doing is illegal, and if HUD came in here, I don't remember the exact words, you'd be in big trouble, okay? So it became a legal issue. Then it became a legal issue because you were actually an attorney, right? So if you hear something, you might say, yeah, that is illegal. So I just want to make sure that we all know what was written to the real estate brokers. There's a lot about leasing, commissions charged, interest, and a whole bunch of stuff, but I'm going to get to all the contextual part of it. The perception of MVT to the outside world has long, this is to the real estate agents, that we're prospective real estate agents. The perception of MVT to the outside world has long been an area of concern. Today, residents do not want to be perceived as living in a nursing home or an assisted living facility. Yet, board minutes from many years back indicate concerns relative to, and I quote from the board minutes, too many people not capable of living independently in the independent area and too many caretakers in the building. That's a quote from a prior board. I don't know when that was, but that was long ago.
30 years ago.
30 years ago.
It's been adopted.
While there is no
Because
expectation.
those questions are still being asked today. We
Right.
have people that approach us every day of every week saying, there are too many people moving into this building that don't need to be living here. They are not capable of caring for themselves.
Okay.
All we're trying to do is
Hey, Bill,
respond
Bill, sorry. I know what you want to do, but I want to finish the quote. All right, because I think it's important for people to know what was actually said, not what people think was said. And then you can speak openly and honestly about your position. While there's no expectation that the on-site realtor would be able to control this situation, there would be an expectation that the on-site realtor will assist us in monitoring prospective buyers and renters based on the criteria established for independent living. Additionally, for those who do not appear to meet that criteria, the on-site realtor would be expected to provide them with information about our PCC, about our potential living, let me go back to the quote, would be expected to provide them with information relative to potential alternative living arrangements available in the MVT personal care home.
So what is the criteria?
Finish the sentence, please.
Exactly, what is the criteria?
Oh, what is the criteria? Criteria for independent living is anybody who can
afford it.
I don't have it written down, but I would. Anyone who doesn't need help with the activities of daily life. That's independent living. Right?
So
Doesn't mean-
people who have somebody coming in with them 24/7 shouldn't be here.
It doesn't matter. We don't care who comes in. But you don't want to set a false expectation for people because we have a facility, we have personnel, we have a cost structure that is for independent living people. People can maintain the activities of daily life. So we don't want to pretend by our real estate providers or our investors that they're getting something that we don't have. And because we don't have it, okay? So people can come in based on what they hear, and I've heard it so many times, that, oh, nobody told me that. Hell, I had Jerry Barr come up and say to me that he hasn't been up to the PCC for any time. He didn't know what it was, okay? And so
That's not
we
true.
need to know.
Jerry, stand up then and
Hey,
say.
yeah, stand up because you said it right to my face.
I never said I've never been up there. I said I wouldn't bring, I have been up there, and I wouldn't bring people up before, and I said I would bring them up now, definitely, because I'm very impressed
Jerry,
with it.
you said you didn't know what the PCC was.
What do you mean?
This is turning
You didn't know what it was about, what it did. You said it right to my face.
Yeah,
Brian, I never said I've never been up there. That's not-
You know what? You might not have said that. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, it was a rumor. Which there are a lot of that go around here.
Right, how can I say that? I mean, I've been up there many
Well, I think
times,
he
but.
justified what he really did say, because you did sell us argument
Right.
too.
I don't wanna, I'll grant you.
Let me just back up to what
Yep.
Trish is saying. You were the first unit I sold. You guys, I didn't know anything back then. I will say that. I can say that, what, 3, 4 years later?
And I certainly don't wanna make it about me, right? It's not about, hang on a second, Jill.
I will say that many people probably don't know this, that people move in and they're not independent and they don't have caretakers. Administration has a list of those residents who are not independent, they do not have a caretaker, but administration makes sure that they are fed every day because otherwise they can't be fed. Okay?
That's not
Okay.
independent.
that's not.
Hang on.
In that point, what if Susan was to go away or retire, or we didn't have the staff to do that? To make sure those people are fed every single day, all 3 meals, because they're not independent and they don't have a caretaker. That's an issue for administration.
That should be addressed.
The implication that people are suggesting, Dan, Bill, okay, maybe others, the implication is that somehow the board has a culture that says, you know what, if you're not 55 and able to do jumping jacks, okay, that you're not gonna be here, all right? We don't want you here. That can't be further, I don't care if you're 55 or 155. You can live independently, and if you can't, and you have a caretaker, that's okay, but that's your responsibility. It doesn't matter.
Feeding people. That's right.
No, I'm gonna let you, I'm gonna hang on to all these people for a second, and Bill, you go ahead and say what you want, because we're talking about things that are out there, that have been put out there, about the culture of the board. And we're gonna clear it up.
Well, I'm not
Can I
gonna
just-
move.
can I just-
Go ahead.
One more thing. I wish that,
Oh.
as far as bylaws go, if we could put some more writing into the bylaws of the kind of people, not kind of people, but what expect, the definition of what our culture is, whatever you wanna call it. But I just wanna get it set.
I'm not trying to,
I just
I'm
wanna
out of
get
your
it.
real estate business.
No, not real estate. I'm just, Brian, I'm just trying to get it so that people know when they come in here, the expectation of everybody. Not me, not you, just coming in here instead of, nobody knows right now. And that's why a lot of different people come in here who are not ready to be here or shouldn't be here.
Brian, this culture of the board came up at our homeowners meeting, in which Bill Thrasher, his remarks were that there is a culture on our board that they want to get rid of all the people here with walkers or those who are in wheelchairs. And he pointed to his wife. Some of the people there believed it. And he said, of course, as a lawyer, I can tell you that is not true. Later on, Dan Castle over there stopped me in the hallway. And he brought this up. And I said, I don't believe that. said, oh, yes, there is that culture on the board that they want to get rid of these people, and I have the letter to prove it. Well, he has totally misunderstood the letter that was written by Bill Lane.
Well, all I want to say in addition to any of this is that we're just really trying to respond to what you people want. We hear every day from people that there are people moving in here that shouldn't be living here, Bill. We need to do something about this. Well, we don't know what to do about it. We don't even know how to approach it. But we also have an obligation to people that are moving here who think they're moving into a place that is totally independent living, and that everybody that's living here is an active senior. So really all we're trying to do is to be sure that Mount Vernon Towers portrays to every prospective person that walks in that front door what we really are and what they can realistically expect when they get here. And at this point in time, if you walk in the front door and you're expecting to see everybody on all 10 floors of these buildings that are what I would define as an active senior, you're not going to find it.
So I just I'm a little, we started out this conversation with Brian reading something that went out to realtors. So that communication that you read, who was that from and who was it sent to? It was sent to you. So
No, it was from him.
No.
it was from you.
No.
It's from Bill?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm just trying to understand, because it was unclear to me when you read that. It sounded like there were criteria that realtors were supposed to evaluate people based on whether or not they were X, Y, and Z. Could you restate that? Because I kind of heard that.
That's not what it said.
Okay, just,
It-
again, so I'm asking for
it sim-
clarification.
It simply said that the on-site realtor
Okay.
would be expected to provide them with information relative to the potential alternative living arrangements available in the MBT personal care home.
Okay, something before
perhaps-
before that, there was the word criteria.
Read the last part of the sentence, please.
Yep, will do. I'll go all the way back. While there is no expectation that the on-site realtor would be able to totally control this situation, remember it's coming from a quote, there would be an expectation that the on-site realtor will assist us in monitoring prospective buyers and renters based on the criteria established for independent living. Now, I'll
Okay.
grant you.
Okay, so I will
yeah.
just say, having worked in healthcare and now I work with hospitals, I wouldn't want any real estate agent determining whether or not I could live here. I'm sorry, they're not qualified.
That's not what it says.
Okay, that is what it says.
That's not
I'm
what it
sorry,
says.
you just said it, that they would help monitor and evaluate based on expectations. I think it's I think we need to be really careful how the board sends out communications, because it does affect me and it affects everybody that lives here. If you're making statements that would put us at risk for legal liability, we cannot ask a realtor to evaluate a person. That's just not, whether or not it was meant that way, whether or not you meant it that way, I
That's
heard
what
it
you
that
said.
way. I listened to, I heard it that way. So I just wanna say, I would appreciate any communications going out by the board, and you do act on all of our behalves, that you're a little more careful in how you say things, because I heard that you wanted the real estate agent to monitor expectations for people who live here. So I just don't think that that's something that we want to put out there in the
That
general
was not the
public.
intent.
Okay, great, I'm glad it wasn't.
And it goes on to further explain that, so but a person can stop right there, and if they did, I can see your point, I absolutely see it, right? And we can concede the fact
We can see.
that that is probably, could have been phrased better.
The problem here is the word monitor.
I
Monitor
think
was a
we-
very
but
bad
we've already
choice.
conceded. What
What
do you want?
you should have said was inform.
It
There's a
should be.
difference
Bless his
between
heart.
monitor and.
I agree with
Better
you.
word, we agree.
We both agree.
I didn't write it.
Meanwhile, if someone's coming in to lease a unit and they're bedridden, they're deaf and blind, can't get up, I mean, none of you know. Meanwhile, if someone's wanting to lease a unit, and this is just an example, if they're permanently bedridden, they can't get out of bed, they're deaf and blind, you kinda know they're not appropriate for independent living.
They should know that before they come here.
Right.
So,
Yes, that's
on the other
that's
side
the
of that,
point.
I've gotta make sure,
That's the
administration's gotta
point.
make sure they're fed every day.
That is the point.
Monitor and inform.
Brian,
Yeah,
man,
yeah,
this is the last thing I'm gonna say.
okay. Okay.
And that is, yeah, the use of the word criteria is what hit me. That's what I had heard. I think it would be helpful, unless there's some confidentiality, to make a copy of that letter available so everybody can see the whole thing and get the context of it.
I mean, that might be fine.
Okay.
I don't, you know.
But if we simply say, here is what we have, here are the services we provide, we do not provide these, that's as far as we can go legally without implying, you know, that they've got to go further than that and screen anybody.
That's, the point is that we have many people, many families coming here to particularly lease units on behalf of a family member that we never see. We don't know what the situation is with those people. A lease is paid, the owner doesn't know what the situation is with the person that's gonna be living here. We don't know what's gonna be living here. Many times, the owner, the realtors do know what that situation is or what potentially is gonna happen because they're talking with the families. And really all we're asking for there is for a heads up.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna, you know what, I acknowledge, and that's acknowledged because, you know what, we could just put out something that says, you know what, here's the situation, this is what we are, this is what we're not, and, you know, people are gonna make their decision, and we're gonna move on from it. You know, that even that note, it wasn't being sent to the community, right? And it's not an excuse, right, for what might be a poorly worded 2 words that, right, it's not an excuse for that, it's just that it was never intended to be something that was a communication that was sent to the, word was for 3 real estate agents. Right, but it
Probably under
became
the
way more.
about, and on the website, under the about section, we need to put exactly, define
I
independent
think
living.
that's a
and
valid
what we're-
comment. That's a valid comment.
Diana Daniel pointed out at the meeting that
Exactly,
this
yeah.
was the only facility that she looked at when she was buying here that did not. Am I quoting you correctly,
Can
Diana?
I just add a comment?
I don't know that
Words are important, and this is exactly why you have caused a problem by adding a referendum for us to vote on that says assisted living. Please look at your words before you publish them. Communication is really, really important.
What we did find is that when we looked at a number of other places, it's like apples and oranges, because most places are controlled by corporate and they're all leased. And as a landlord, I learned, unfortunately, with a mistake I made with a tenant, that that I won't lease a unit anymore to anybody if I've not met them face to face. Because as a landlord, it's my responsibility to maintain that 55. And I think that some investors do take the easy approach out, and it's up to landlords to lease properly to their individuals. But it is, every other unit we did look at did have criteria, but it was not, it was a different situation. because corporate can control, if it's just leased, a room that you lease, a suite you lease, an apartment you lease, yeah, you have to agree to that, and they have the ability to say, you can't live in independent anymore, you have to move up to the next stage. In fact, Canterbury Court, I guess you saw this in the north side, the big expansion Canterbury Court, adding garden tower and health center, adding, I think, 300 square feet, 208 apartments, and they are able to move people up in staged care, and this is not Mount Vernon, and I think that, people need to understand that.
And I think part of that comes from marketing, which I have said, why are we spending so much money on marketing and what are we trying to sell? If we just want to sell independent living, why are we having all the budget for the marketing when we don't even have places for sale other than one or two? And when you're marketing, if you have your website and make it clear what we're marketing, independent living, and you could even, I promise you don't have the nerve to do this, but you could even say what we're not, along with what we are.
As the pincushion, I'd like to respond. First of all, I invite all of you to go back and listen to the minutes of the last board meeting, and you can decide whether Bill's words are correct or Reed and Brian's words are correct. Second of all, regarding the letter that Bill put out, there's one key phrase at the very end of that paragraph he read that he did not read. The on-site realtor would be expected to provide them with information relative to potential alternate living arrangements within the MVT personal care home, or perhaps other facilities that might better accommodate their needs. That is called steering. It's a legal phrase. It's illegal as hell. And if you don't believe me, call up the Georgia Real Estate Commission. I've got the phone number for you if you want it. Georgia Department of Housing and Urban Development. I've got the phone number if you want it. HUD, the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development. I've got the phone number if you want it. It's illegal for us to be identifying characteristics that are suitable and not suitable here.
Let's move on. Let's move
I'd
on. We've already been over this.
I'd like
Let's go.
to change the subject.
Yeah, please do.
Now,
Thank you.
We don't want to listen to this.
you don't want to listen to it. All right, then all of you listen to the lawsuits that are going to come in.
All right.
There's one certain, okay.
I don't think it's
Ridiculous.
ridiculous.
Go online and
We said we didn't want to listen to it.
go online and Google HUD settlements.
Are you an attorney?
Thank you.
No, she's Brian.
Are you? I'm
No,
sorry.
she's not.
That's
She's the
Brian.
wife of the chairman.
I just
Why are you
want
looking at me? I haven't
don't,
said anything.
I'm sorry, honey. You don't tell me where I sit, you don't tell me what I say, so I'm not gonna turn around, but if you are an attorney and you have a difference of opinion.
I'm an owner.
Okay, I am too. Okay, so.
Each have one of
Yeah,
those.
is there an attorney here that can specify what you're
We,
trying
we
to
are,
say?
you know what, I'm going to adjourn the meeting.
I second the motion.
All in favor? Aye.